I was recently talking to a small business owner who was getting denied for business capital. He noticed just last year he was getting approved for upwards of six figures, but he noticed that things started to slow down. He started getting approved for lower limits, and his business also started getting denials for the first time in his business career. And so in this video, I want to share with you what I shared with him of how we were able to turn those denials around into approvals and a framework that you can use to get approved for business capital in your own business. So with that in mind, let's get right into it. When banks are looking at a business that they are looking to extend capital to, they are essentially looking at four key parts. Now, there's a few more than these four parts right here, but these are essentially the main ones that we at least want to pay close attention to. At the top, you have credit. So this is going to be both on the personal front and on the business front. Next up, you have time in business. This is essentially exactly what it sounds like. This is how long your business has been in operations. Next up, you have financials, which is like the fourth lever that banks are looking at when they're determining how much capital they're going to extend to a business. So I'll put financials. And then lastly, which is the dial that I want to look at with us here today in this video, is going to be the overall risk that they are taking with the business. And so if you've never seen this concept before, here's essentially how it works. When you are applying for business capital, banks have different categories of risk that they're willing to take depending on the industry that you are involved in. And so there's essentially four different types of levels, or four different levels, I should say, that banks are looking at when you submit your application, when you submit your business to get access to capital, whether it's as simple as a business credit card, a business line of credit, an SBA loan, it does not matter. They are going to look at this and then they're going to spit out essentially a level of risk that they are taking. And then from there, they're going to determine yay or nay on extending you access to capital. At the top, which is the land that none of us want to live in, is restricted industries. The reason why restricted industries is the land that none of us want to live in is because this is where you get those automatic DQs. This is where you have to start going to high processing merchant accounts. This is where you have to go to merchant cash advance type of companies. This is where you're paying funding companies buku amounts of money. You have to go to hard money sharks because financial or traditional lending doesn't want to touch your file. So you want to stay out of this realm. I think that for the majority of us, if I'm just looking at our data, the majority of us aren't going to fall in line inside of this. The reason for that is because typically with restricted industries, it's not the majority of the businesses. And so some common ones just off the top of my head are, and these are a bit more taboo, right? Which again, based off of what banks are looking at, which is going to be adult film, adult entertainment, gambling, casinos. You have liquor stores, tobacco shops, cannabis. All of those are seen a bit more taboo. And so that's why with those type of industries, it's far more restricted with your typical type of industries. Next up, which is where the majority of the people fall in when they're at least first structuring their industry, is high risk. Now, when you are in a high risk industry, the first thought is, I have to get out of this as fast as I can. Depending if you've already kind of been dealing with this, can you get denied more often with a business that's considered high risk? Yes. Is it an automatic DQ? No. I'm going to give you some actionable steps that you can take toward the end of the video of how you can stay within a high risk industry and still get access to capital, because we help clients do this all the time. Especially if you've been in business for some time in that industry, if your credit is on point, both on the personal and on the business side, and then of course, if you have strong financials, if you're there. Those are three like quick ways that you can help offset if you are in a high risk industry. But I'm going to give you one more toward the end of the video. Now, when you are in a high risk industry, what this means is banks are going to say, okay, the type of work that you're involved in, we don't necessarily like to lend to. Here's a couple of reasons for that. They're more likely to default. the economics on the business maybe don't make sense for us to lend to, because again, the probability of us getting our money back isn't as likely as if we were to lend maybe to another type of industry that we're seeing better results in terms of, again, just getting our money back. That's all this is about, right? It's not a personal decision. It's just data driven. And then the third reason that your business is potentially considered high risk is just flat out the appetite that that bank wants to lend to. They just don't want to touch your industry. So a quick example of this is trucking. Trucking, my dad was a trucker for 30 years. It's a fantastic business, but with where the economy is, again, at the time of this recording, and with the amount of, I'd say, people that aren't as profitable in the trucking space, banks see that data, they collect it, and then they say or not every, but let's say for every 10 trucking businesses that we lend to, we're only getting repaid, let's say 25% of the time on time. And then the other 75%, they're either having to extend their payments, they're defaulting, or they're just going out of business completely, which is just another form of defaulting. And so now you have a business that it's a legitimate business, but it starts to move into the high risk realm. The two realms, or the two levels that we want to live in as business owners, if we can, is, hope you're enjoying the content. Really quickly, if you are a business owner and you are trying to not just get access to working capital, but you're trying to put a system into place that allows you to get working capital at scale, we'll love to talk to you. Go ahead and book a demo with us. We'll take a look at where you're at and where you're looking to go. InsideInnerCircle.com, down in the description and pinned as a comment. Let's continue on with the video. Going to be in the low risk sector. I'll put this right here, the low risk sector. And I have one more that's actually better than low risk, which a lot of business owners stop here, but I actually like to take it a level deeper with our clients because it just puts gasoline on the amount of capital that you can get. Low risk means that at a microeconomic scale and at a macroeconomic scale, meaning the business is doing both good locally and geographically based on all the data the bank has, the probability of this person or this business staying in business is highly likely. So you get a point there. The probability of us getting our initial money back that we essentially, again, extended a credit line to you, is highly likely. You get another point there. And then third is this business has strong cash flow cycles, meaning money is continuing to come in through the account consistently, which is what banks want to see. Now, a couple examples of low risk industries that we're at least working with right now, just off the top of my head, are construction companies, specifically roofing, HVAC, home service type of businesses. That's mainly because that's who we deal with. So we know quite a bit about home services, how to essentially get them to scale their capital, and then real estate investors. Now, do we deal with e-commerce, a couple of one-offs like consulting, CPA firms, real estate agents? We do, but that's primarily who we deal with. Now, as promised, there is a fourth level or a fourth layer of risk that banks are willing to take in terms of the industry that they're bringing in. And this fourth level right here, I don't see it talked about, but it is one that we see. We're constantly having this conversation, which is why I wanted to make this video with our clients, which is going to be preferred. I'll run out of room there. Preferred industry. I'll just do this. Preferred industries. This one right here, if you can nail it, is where you're going to unlock significant, not just amount of capital, but also you're going to reduce drastically the amount of denials that you get along the way. Now, if you're wondering, Irv, this is cool, but how do I know if it's a preferred industry? How do I know if it's a low risk? I'm going to give you essentially two ways that you can determine this. Number one is NAICS.com. You can just go ahead and check out your NAICS code. It has like a little bar on there and lets you know more so where it lands. The other measure that you can use is essentially what we like to use is we like to go directly to the source. We'd like to deal directly with the financial institutions. And we actually have data on this where we see, okay, based on what you guys are looking at, is this a business that you guys typically have inside of your portfolio or you don't? And so the practical way that you can use this in your own business, because obviously you most likely don't have the data that we have. So the way that you can use this in your own business is you can simply ask a business banker when you go into that bank or that credit union and ask them, over the last, I say 3 to 6 months, you can maybe extend it out, over the last 6 to 12 months, which industries are the main ones that you guys are currently partnering with the most? Or which industries are you seeing, Mr. Banker, Mrs. Banker, that you've been funding the most? Here's why this is important, and this is where I wanted to bring it home. Banks have what's known as an LA, and no, not Los Angeles. This is known as a lending appetite. And it looks something like this, kind of like a pie chart, right? And so I want you to think of it, if you've ever invested, kind of like M1 Financial, if you have any one of those stocks, or if you have any one of those stock apps, then you know that there's like a little pie of how you can distribute where your capital is going and then the stocks that you're buying. It's the same thing in the banking world, and it breaks down something like this. For the purpose of the example, we're going to go 25% across the board, just to keep it simple. Pretend that this pie equals 100% of the lending portfolio. So let's say at 25%, we have construction is one of them. Let's say we have consulting is another one. Don't know why I started off with two cons. Let's go back and clean that up. Construction, consulting. Let's say that we have education is right here. And then let's say lastly, we have retail. Maybe we'll just play around with e-commerce. So we'll just put e-com on there. This means that the lending appetite for the bank that maybe you're going to, you could have the right business. You could be profitable, perfect credit, properly structured, but the lending appetite for who they typically want to deal with, you're just not like in that essentially realm of, or like in their wheelhouse. So the lending appetite, if you see here, you're out of it. And so what you'd want to do is one of three things, which I promised you that I would give you some action items. So let me write that here. I want to bring this information home for you so that way you know what to do with it. Number one, this is the easiest lever that you can pull on. If you're looking to reclassify your business into a low risk or into a preferred industry, the easiest lever that you can pull on first, or at least look at it, is the naming convention of your business. The reason why the naming convention of your business is going to be so important is because if you have a business that says, let's say, Irv Trucking, and if anyone has his name, then my bad, I stole it from you just for the video. Irv Trucking LLC, then it doesn't matter how well structured everything else is, the name is a dead giveaway. Versus if I have Irv and Friends LLC, that's a bit more broad. It's a bit more of a broad stroke. It's a bit more generic, right? And so you can use that to go into the bank, get access to the capital that you need, assuming everything else is dialed in. The second lever that you can pull on is going to be the classification of the business, which is right here. The classification, specifically classification code. Now, this right here is going to be the 6-digit number that whenever you apply for a business bank account, or whenever you're opening a business bank account, or whenever you're applying for business capital, you're going to be classified by that 6-digit code. That 6-digit code is going to put you into a bucket, which is going to be the industry, the business type, and it's also going to put you into a business demographic, so to speak, of like where your business falls inside of the business realm, if that makes sense. So again, it's business industry, business type, and then like the business ecosystem as a whole specific to your industry. Changing your classification code, that's a training in it of itself, but that would be the second piece that I would look at to alter if, again, your goal is to fall in line of low risk to preferred industry. Number three is going to be swapping out industries as a whole. Now, this one, the reason why I have it as least effective is because, if I'm being real with you, it's way easier to swap out a classification code, making sure that that data matches across the board. And obviously, it's way easier to swap out the name than it is to just like transition the industry as a whole, especially if you've been in there for some time. If you're a startup, then maybe this right here is way easier for you to do. But if you've been in business for some time, I'll be real with you, I would like stick to these two right here. And then lastly, which is like a little bonus that I have for us, which ironically enough, it's the first place that a lot of people check, but it's actually the last place that we check, which is the bank. Believe it or not. And I know that this sounds counterintuitive, but most people, when they're getting denied for business capital, they just say, oh, can I just get, and I see this all the time in the comments, can I just get like a list of the best banks? Can, you give us the best banks or credit unions? Guys, I'll probably say this till my face turns blue. The banks are the last place that we look at when we're helping clients get access to business capital. That's actually the fun part. That's the easiest part, which is, I mean, you could just go ahead and Google best banks for, for your industry, and you'll probably get a ton of them. But unless everything else is dialed in the business, which we just finished breaking down. So again, you can go to the best bank, but if the name and the classification code is off, then you're still going to, number one, be outside of this piece right here, the lending appetite, which then puts you inside of one of these two brackets right here. Hopefully you found value in this content today. These action items, like this is where I would start right now if I were in your shoes, which is where the business owner that we helped scale their capital, like we removed that bottleneck just by looking at this, and they were off to the races after that. You can go ahead, take a look at this. If you need our team to take a look at your business, run it through an audit, and see more so the bottlenecks that are keeping you back, not just from getting access to capital, but putting a setup into place that's going to allow you to get access to capital at scale, we'll love to talk to you. You can go ahead and book a call with us, insideinnercircle.com. But other than that, I will see you in the next video. Bye.